There is one critical thing that best-selling writers use that ordinary schlubs like you and I don't. This is what separates engaging, page-turning writing from the usual boring prattle that most people write. While common folk think about things like plot and characters and setting, the best writers out there instead think about emotionally engaging the reader and making them feel a certain way as they move through the writing. When you think about it, being engaged with fiction seems like an illogical thing. These people aren't real. I don't know who they are. This stuff isn't actually happening, yet my heart is racing and I'm yelling at my Kindle while sitting on the bus. Falling in love with a story doesn't happen on a logical level. It happens on an emotional one. And if your writing doesn't engage the reader emotionally, they're unlikely to fall in love with it. So today, we're going to talk about the secret weapon that good writers use. And that weapon is emotionally engaging the reader. So the first way to emotionally engage the reader is to trigger emotions through concrete sensory descriptions. Emotions happen fast. They're reactions to situations that we find ourselves in. Fundamentally, an emotion is like an alarm. It's designed to motivate us to action. And just like a fire alarm going off when it senses smoke, reader emotions are triggered by sensory information. What the characters see, hear, feel, smell, and taste can provoke certain emotions in the reader, and this is communicated primarily by your descriptions. Say that you have a character walking through the rain. Now, a arguably bad way to describe this is to say that it was raining out. That's a very abstract description, and the show don't tell people will come after you. It's unlikely to evoke a lot of emotion in the reader. Now, you can improve that description quite a bit, but it still may not evoke any emotion. You can describe the damp air and the rain pattering on glistening foliage. You can describe how it's turned the dirt road into an impassable morass. That will all improve your description, but it may not work to evoke emotions. To do this, you need to describe what the characters are feeling. Describe their shirt sticking to their back. Describe their fingers trembling in the damp chill. Describe their wet socks sliding and bunching around their feet. You can make a description more concrete, but it still might not be emotionally engaging. That's where the sensory information describing what the characters are feeling and experiencing comes in. Experiential descriptions heavy on sensory detail will help evoke emotions in the reader and make them feel what your characters are feeling. This is the extra angle that great writers put on their descriptions. Next up, the second thing that you can do to emotionally engage the reader is develop attachments to your story and your characters. People usually don't feel emotions about things that they aren't attached to. This is related to another piece of advice that you'll often see that says that you need to earn your endings. What this means is that for any part of your story, either the ending or any other part, for any part of your story to have an emotional impact, you need to get the reader invested into the story in some way. They need to develop an attachment to it. This is very hard to do, and there are quite a few different ways to approach it. One way for the reader to develop attachments is to have some sort of relatable element in your characters, something that the reader can identify with. This works even if the exact details aren't necessarily something the reader can connect with. Like, sure, you've probably never impulsively married a guy in Monaco and been swept into English high society, all while being endlessly compared to your new husband's late wife, like the protagonist from the novel Rebecca. But I'm guessing you've probably felt what it's like to be unfavorably compared to someone much better than you at some point in your life. You've probably felt inadequate in some dimension. You've probably felt out of your depth or over your head at some point in your life. Those are things that a lot of readers can relate to. When the conflicts in your story are familiar to the reader on some level with what they encounter in their own lives, they will empathize with the characters and potentially become attached. This is a hard thing to do, but very important. And next up, the next way to emotionally engage the reader is to exploit the negativity bias. In an evolutionary context, the organisms that focus on solving problems rather than basking in their successes are usually the ones that survive to reproduce. It's like, sure, we've got enough food to eat for today, but we're going to be hungry again tomorrow. We should probably focus on that. We should probably focus on finding more food. That's a better way to survive than just kind of sitting there and being happy that you had food for today. People are naturally biased towards focusing on the negatives. We are drawn to problems. We pay attention to things that are going wrong. Just watch 45 seconds of any cable news channel and you'll see this on full display. If you want to engage the reader emotionally, most of what you display should be negative emotions. This is just basic storytelling. Most stories have conflict. Most stories have the heroes going through hell. Most stories have the odds stacked against the characters. Most stories push the characters to their limit. Most stories have a lot of negativity. More conflict, higher odds of failure will generally work to be more emotionally engaging. Tension is a fundamental aspect of reader engagement, and tension primarily derives from uncertainty, and uncertainty is usually based around the potential of a negative outcome, or the uncertain nature of a positive outcome. Now, not every good piece of fiction out there is necessarily laden with a ton of negativity. You can kind of achieve the same thing as having negativity by having an unfulfilled goal. An unfulfilled goal that the characters are pursuing can serve in place of negativity. The unmet desire of a character, even if it happens in the context of a relatively positive story, can create the same effect. Erotica, for instance, is emotionally engaging in a specific way because the characters are pursuing a specific goal that I can't describe in detail on a YouTube video. The pursuit of that particular outcome, resolution, climate, no, I can't call it that. Anyway, the negativity bias can come through uncertainty, which will create tension, which should engage the reader in your story. All of this emotional engagement stuff is so tricky because it happens on a very intuitive level. We don't logic our way into thinking about specific emotions. This is why a really good story is not about just checking a bunch of boxes or fitting it to a plot structure or anything like that. It happens on a much deeper level. Readers are highly variable as well. What causes one person to become attached to a story might not make somebody else become attached. What's emotionally engaging for one set of readers might be boring to another set of readers. That's totally fine. That's why different people like reading different stories, and it's just something that an author has to deal with. Speaking of dealing with things, we are almost done dealing with this video because we're at the end of it. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.